Thank you, His Excellency, for granting us this interview. I'd like to start with your views on the new government in Myanmar, because we are going to have a new government within a few days.
Minglaba, and good morning. We have been awaiting for this transition, and we have been observing it very keenly. Although it has taken slightly longer than anticipated in comparison to other countries, but I think this 3-4 months of time was in a way required for all the stakeholders to collect their thoughts, to appreciate their challenges, and then also find out their comfort zones as they will go into the actual implementation stage, hopefully from 1st of April. So I think this transition has generated a lot of interest, and the bigger challenge for the incoming administration perhaps will be to modulate the very high expectation and address things based on their maturity, and in a way which will be inclusive of all stakeholders in Myanmar. I see a very positive future in the coming days.
You have witnessed the November elections in Myanmar. How do you view the conduct and performance of the Myanmar's election, like when you compare your own experience in Bangladesh?
In fact, this particular election, from campaign to actual conduct of the election and post-election, I think it has been done quite well. And I must say with all sincerity that the people of Myanmar should be extremely happy on their own conduct, on their own enthusiasm, and also on their choice that they have expressed through this ballot box. It will be unfair not to give the due credit to the Union Election Commission, because it has done a splendid job. Without much experience, it has done a job which is very well done. And I should also like to give some credit to the media, because the way media has kept and sustained the interest in the election, despite a lot of aberrations and detractions from time to time. But media has been able to keep the focus on the election, and that is how people could articulate their views on their choices. And I think that the election has thrown up all kind of positives for Myanmar polity, and it has created a foundation for Myanmar and the incoming government in particular to take steps towards reconciliation, then address the long pending issues of development, and at the same time keeping security both internal and external in mind. So I think it has thrown up very many positive opportunities and created the right platform for Myanmar in the near future.
What are your expectations from the new government that is to be led by Nationally for Democracy? For the two relationships, for the two countries' relationship, between Myanmar and Bangladesh.
NLD has come with a resounding victory, and this victory is a reflection of the people's long yearning for freedom, for inclusion, democracy, and development. So, in a way, NLD epitomizes all these desires of the people, and we expect that based on this support, NLD will be able to free its activities from perceptions and base their actions on facts. As NLD goes into domestic actions, and primarily how NLD is going to address the ethnic issues, I think NLD should have a very high level of confidence after getting this resounding victory, that they will not be required to pander to emotions. They can base their actions on the people's support, the groundswells of support that they have received. So that is a very positive thing for Myanmar, and I am sure that the ongoing process of reconciliation and the political dialogue will generate momentum. Now, as it generates momentum domestically, it will also have an impact externally. Because a confident administration will be able to take the right decisions externally too. And in that context, we think that NLD administration will be able to see Myanmar's relations with Bangladesh in the right context and make a friendship which will be durable. And in that, I see that in the coming days and years, it will be an engagement based on honesty, openness, trust, ultimately leading to a confidence building, which will define the contours of a bilateral relations, which will be based on trust and respect. So we look forward to upturning our bilateral relations.
How would you describe the state of Bangladesh-Myanmar relation over the past few years, especially in the last 5 years where we had President U Thein Sein?
I think before answering this question for the relations in the past 5 years, I think I would like to go slightly backward. Ever since Bangladesh came into being, we had been having our own internal problems related to democracy, related to development. So we were also inward looking in many ways. And then we were also focused more on our relations with the West for obvious reasons. So in a way, I would be honest in admitting that Bangladesh couldn't do justice to its immediate neighbor, to the East. And at the same time, in case of Myanmar, I think there was an inward lookingness from the very beginning, particularly after 1962. So when Bangladesh tried to look east towards her neighbor, Myanmar, and develop friendship, I think Myanmar was perhaps not ready to reciprocate in the manner it was expected. So that was the problem that happened in the last 3-4 decades. Unfortunately, during that period, because of lack of communication, it was the misperceptions that ruled the day. The divergences got more coverage and the convergences were buried under those divergences. So that was the big challenge for our two countries. Now, after the Thein Sein administration came, I think the expectation from Bangladesh side was that we will be able to break free of these negatives in the bilateral relations and would be able to develop. So things have started moving, but I would not be calling it a very positive upturn, but I would say that we could have done much better in the last 5 years. What Bangladesh tried to do in the last 5 years is that our Prime Minister was here twice, our Foreign Minister came here a few times. We have sent all our chiefs, security chiefs and the defense chiefs, Army, Navy, Air Force and the Border Guard. All were here in Myanmar. We were expecting return visits of this because we tend to believe that through this exchange at the very high level, we'll be able to appreciate the approaches of each other, and that will be helpful in developing the right framework for our bilateral relations. So that didn't happen the way we expected. So I would not call it a very dynamic, vibrant bilateral relations, but then in the last 5 years we have had a lull period, and I think it is looking up, and we expect that upturn to take momentum in the time of the incoming administration.
What would you say are the biggest challenges for the two countries, like for example in terms of border security, in terms of crime and also illegal migrants, like these issues? What would you say are the biggest challenges?
No, these are very important aspects of our challenges, and particularly if the border is not peaceful, other sectoral collaboration cannot be expected to flourish. So that is why we have been focusing on developing better engagement on the security domain. And in the recent months, we have focused on a few instruments. One is on developing a day-to-day level interaction, and we call it BLO, Border Liaison Office. And we have also been working with the Myanmar side, and we are happy in that we have agreed to a framework for a structured dialogue between our security forces and agencies. So with these two, we would expect that we will have much better working relations on a day-to-day basis and also on the political and the policy level on a periodic basis. If I may say something about the border as it stands today, I would say that border is generally peaceful, and we don't have too many border skirmishes in comparison to other countries. I think it is not in a bad shape. It is rather in a good shape. But then sometimes the perceptions and the realities are not the same. So once we get into this collaboration that we have talked about, I think it will be easy for us to bring that reality over perception. So that will help us. One. Number two, as far as the illegal crossing in the border is concerned, I think there are two kinds of illegal movements that happens. One is innocent movement. Say a fisherman in a Naf river or in the adjoining water near the territorial waters, they cross unknowingly the borders, and then they kept either they are arrested and they are detained, and sometimes they are jailed. So for this innocent crossovers, I think there was a mechanism in 1980 border arrangement, and if we can activate that effectively, I think the innocent ones will be addressed very easily. Then there are people who cross over not innocent, so they know that they are going for a purpose. On that, I think the collaboration that we are anticipating under the two MOUs will help us to control that significantly. But then we have to also bear in mind that the border in that stretch is a densely forested area where neither the border guard of Bangladesh, they have presence on that stretch of land. From the Myanmar side also, it is also not fully covered. So that is why often it is porous and it is taken advantage of by the miscreants. So that is another, I think, area of our concern. That some miscreants and armed groups are moving sometimes. From the Bangladesh side, we have been working with Myanmar, at least in the last 2 years, to flush out some of these people having arms and trying to move, and taking advantage of the very difficult border terrain, and also taking advantage of the triangulation, because it is a place where India, Bangladesh and Myanmar meets. So it is very difficult to monitor, but I think with this level of collaboration, we'll be able to address these aspects of arms smuggling and movement of armed people there. Third is, I'm happy that both Bangladesh and Myanmar in the recent months after the boat people crisis acted decisively on the human traffickers. And that's a good thing that has happened in both sides of the border, and it is ongoing, and I think it will have a positive impact in our bilateral relations. Last but not the least is there are questions of the refugees also, but refugee, as you know, it's a protracted issue, it's a bigger issue. I think it will require a different kind of approach than that I have explained for other cases. So for the refugees, I will need a very honest, intense engagement between our two countries. But then we are hopeful that positive things will come through engagement in the coming time.
You mentioned about the MOUs. Can you elaborate more on those MOUs between the two countries?
These are still not fully concluded. That is why I will not go in full details of it, but I will just touch upon them. In the MOU on security, dialogue and cooperation, so the nomenclature says dialogue. So it will basically facilitate structured dialogue between Bangladesh-Myanmar Army, Bangladesh-Myanmar Navy at the Air Force level, at the border guard level, and also at the agency level. So they will have this opportunity to discuss policy issues. And once those policy issues will be discussed, they will also understand the approaches of the other side. So often the misperception that remains in the security domain and then creates a problem for your planning, and would be addressed through this mechanism. That is our expectation. So this is almost ready, and we are awaiting finalization, conclusion of it. On the BLO, the Border Liaison Office MOU, basically the intention is to collaborate on a minute-to-minute real-time basis. So in that, the expectation is that the two offices initially, and later on we might have more offices along the border. So they will talk to each other and they will not only share information, advanced information if possible, they will also undertake coordinated border patrol, which is missing now. In many parts of that border, as I have explained, it is not manned by people like the BOP's border outpost. It is not manned. But in those stresses, if there is based on the information, if there is a requirement and imperative for a patrol to address some particular issue, I think that will allow this coordinated patrol. I think this will be a big positive step forward.
In recent years, religion has been increasingly used as a pretext by extremists to cause trouble. I think we have seen in Myanmar and we are seeing also in Bangladesh, both countries. How do you see this issue? How do you think both countries or each country can deal with this religion being used by the extremists to cause the trouble?
This religious extremism and extremism in general is something that has been on the rise, at least in the last maybe more than 1 decade. In this process, in case of Bangladesh, what we have tried to do is to address the issue socially, first of all, and then also legally. Within the mechanisms available under our constitution and the laws, I think we have taken sufficient action to tackle this religious extremism in Bangladesh. Many were tried in the past, and many are facing trials now. But then they are all getting a fair trial in the process. But then government is very strong in cutting their finances and monitoring them. That we are doing in case of Bangladesh. And I think we are reasonably successful when we have experiences of much more violent expression of religious extremism in other parts of the world. So Bangladesh from that point of view has done slightly better, and I think we should do it much better and try to follow it with even a harder determination. And now the other problem for this is because of the globalization. Now because of the globalization, extremism in one country or one place or in one society has a reverberation in another society quite far from the origin. So it happens. So that is where I think there is a need for collaboration among all countries in the neighborhood and also countries outside, because the financing part of the extremism is something that has to be dealt with globally. Transnational crime is also linked to that. So it is not only religious extremism. We cannot take satisfaction that it will be confined only to religious elements. It might find articulation in extremism by other people. But then we have also to bear in mind that behind all kind of extremism, there are some reasons, like people becoming vulnerable to something, people becoming marginalized for some reason. So if a society tries to address their vulnerability, their marginalization in the best manner possible based on their own circumstances and requirements, I think many of these problems could be reduced significantly. So this is where I think both Bangladesh and Myanmar should be able to rise to the call of creating a better situation for the minorities, one, for the marginalized and vulnerable people in its own society. Because these are the people who would be more prone to radicalization than others. So first and foremost, I think the marginalization in a society and vulnerability in a particular community or particular group of people will have to be addressed in all its dimensions, in its economic dimension, in their political dimension and social dimension together. So this is where I find a lot of hope that Myanmar is taking the right path towards reconciliation. And through that reconciliation, I think some of the religious indoctrination will also be addressed. And that will be a positive thing for Myanmar, and it will also have a positive impact in the entire region. So we, in the coming time, as we are trying to combat religious extremism and extremism in general in Bangladesh, we would like to have greater collaboration in this particular area with Myanmar.
I'd like to discuss the issue of rising Asia. Many people are talking about Asia's century for this century and future, and we are seeing the growth, economic growth, and a lot of connectivity within the region. So what is the position of Bangladesh in this changing Asia or rising Asia?
It's true that we have been observing very high economic growth and positive development in Southeast Asia and South Asia region. And I think with that, it will be perhaps correct to come to the conclusion that this century will belong to the Asians. And as it is taking shape in that direction in the next 20 to 30 years from now, I think it is Bangladesh and Myanmar are splendidly placed. They can offer themselves as the conduit between the two emerging regions of South Asia and Southeast Asia. And with that, not only these two countries will benefit, they will also then allow the two regions, the Southeast Asia and South Asia regions, to come closer through connectivity and through other means. And even the cultural linkages, because the South Asian and Southeast Asian culture are basically a subset of the greater Asian culture. So if you have greater connectivity of ideas, connectivity of people, connectivity of culture, I think that will again create the right atmosphere for the economic connectivity and well-being for the people of this region. Now, as we discuss the prospect of Bangladesh and Myanmar playing this due role, Myanmar has a lot of catching up to do. Same is the case with Bangladesh. In case of Bangladesh, if I may take this opportunity to say a few words about our resilience. We have been maintaining about 6 to 7% of GDP growth for more than a decade now. We have reduced our dependence on foreign aid and national support significantly, that it has come to even less than 1% these days of our GDP. In the last 3, 4, 5 years, Taka remained stable vis-a-vis dollar. Rather, in many cases, it has appreciated vis-a-vis US dollar. So that says that the economy is doing well. But for Bangladesh, I think the bigger success comes in the social domain than the economic domain. For the given economic growth, I think our social development indices are much more attractive and impressive. We have done splendidly well in case of health, education, women's empowerment, and poverty reduction. Similarly, we expect the good progress that Myanmar has made in the last 5 years to continue in the coming times. And as Myanmar grows and Bangladesh grows, I think that will give the two countries confidence to offer themselves as the conduit of the two regions and make themselves available as the bridges for the future. The other thing that I would like to refer here is our countries alone will not be able to unleash their potentials. We'll have to also depend on the regional benefits that is available. We should be able to exploit those. We should also contribute to developing regional public good. And through that, we can also influence what is happening around us, and we can also benefit from this regional public good. It could be in climate change, it could be in connectivity, it could be in culture, and so on and so forth. So there has to be a very smooth integration of our national perspectives with the regional perspectives, and that is why both Bangladesh and Myanmar in the recent times have been focusing on the regional groupings like SAARC, BIMSTEC, BCIM, Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar initiative, and likewise we're also thinking of doing things together now that we have a well demarcated Bay of Bengal between Bangladesh and Myanmar, and Bangladesh and India. We have well demarcated sea. And now sea offers a huge opportunity for development for the littoral countries. I would expect that we will not only limit ourselves to the land, and will also go into the exploitation in the positive sense of the natural resources available in the sea, and together in this region as a whole can emerge as one economic unit, and maybe at a later time as one social unit, because of the likeness of our cultures and commonness of our aspirations of our peoples in this region. So I see a lot of prospect for regional collaboration as we try to address our own developmental challenges in Bangladesh and Myanmar.
Yeah, we have seen this rise in Asia in the last few years, but we are also sort of seeing the tension or the competition between powers, like for example between China and United States in Asia. So how do you see this sort of challenge for the region and for the countries like Myanmar and Bangladesh?
These days, because of the globalization, it is extremely difficult to remain aloof from what is happening around you. Bangladesh and Myanmar will also be somewhat influenced by things happening in the Pacific, not only in the Bay of Bengal and Andaman Sea. So in that context, we would always hope that the way we have been able to resolve the Bay of Bengal issue, the maritime boundary issue between Bangladesh and Myanmar and Bangladesh and India, and there is already a settled boundary between Sri Lanka and India, that gives us a wonderful example in the modern times that if you have better communications, better approaches, you might have differences, but I think you should be able to resolve it peacefully. And so that is one experience that we would expect countries and the stakeholders in the South China Sea to also take inspiration from. It is not something out of the blue that the countries in a particular region often realign or reposition themselves strategically. It happens from time to time, it happens periodically. But as it happens, the challenge for the international community and for those countries is to ensure that those orientation changes are done in a peaceful manner and without a confrontation. That is the challenge. And now we would expect all the stakeholders in the South China Sea to follow a non-confrontational approach to this particular issue, engage with each other, try to appreciate each other's positions on it, and try to do things in a manner which will be peaceful. As far as Bangladesh's own involvement in it, Bangladesh has been following a foreign policy which is independent. We have not been aligned to any side. And we have been following a foreign policy which, from a maxim called friendship to all and malice towards none. So we would expect that countries in the both sides of the Pacific and also around the Indian Ocean will see and will be motivated more by the need for keeping the sea lanes open so that goods move smoothly and there is no tension in all these straits of Malacca and in the South China Sea or in the Bay of Bengal or in the Indian Ocean, because that will be something which will be taking us backward. Now our countries in this region are already challenged with the developmental deficit, so we'd like to be focused on development and we would not like to be detracted by confrontations of that kind. So our expectation would be that the international community as a whole and the stakeholders in that area would be able to talk to each other, engage, and bring a positive resolution which will be peaceful and based on mutual benefit and trust.
Another thing that I like to ask you is what you, Bangladesh, will be doing in near future to strengthen the two countries' relationship, because we are also having a new government in power.
What I see that our people of Bangladesh and people of Myanmar are not very well conversant about each other. That has happened despite very strong historical linkages in the past. In the recent decades, we didn't have that opportunity to project each other well. So that is the problem. I think we will have to overcome that one. Because if you do not overcome that, you create opportunity for misperception, you create opportunity for people who have extreme views and they can foment various kind of indoctrinated views in the minds of the people. So best solution to address this is to allow people to know each other. Bangladesh people should know the civilizational strength and civilizational past of Myanmar, from the Pagan dynasty of Anauratha and Chayan Siddha to the dynasty that evolved in the Bago and Pegu region, Tabin Sweti and Nandabain and the other king that I forgot. So these are there to be appreciated by people, but we have very little understanding of these dynasties and the civilizational past of Myanmar. Similarly, Bengal had its own civilizational past, and we have done many things in the past which could be appreciated by people of Myanmar. We have linkages between our two countries in the form of Buddhism, how Buddhism flourished in Bengal and also flourished in Myanmar. If there is a communication between our two people, I think they will know that we had many commonalities, that more than that we tend to believe initially. So there is a requirement of allowing this awareness to continue in a big way in the coming years. And here I see a big role of the media. And if we have a communication through media based on culture, based on tourism, based on religious commonalities, based on how we are addressing the concerns of the minorities and the vulnerable people in our countries, how we are addressing the challenges of climate change, what kind of new interventions we are making to address salinity owing to sea level rise, what are the new varieties that has been introduced in rice or for that matter any other crop to address salinity, drought and all kind of attacks. So this is where I think there's a lot of commonality between Bangladesh and Myanmar, because we belong to almost the similar agroclimatic zone. So experience of other countries from outside, they might have advantages of technology, but then that experience may not be immediately replicable in our situation here because of the agroclimatic diversity. But between Bangladesh and Myanmar, we have that advantage, and I think we should be able to share these programs that are good experiences, best examples in Myanmar agriculture with Bangladesh agriculture. We can have the commonalities of our culture shared. Like if we do a program on, say, our minorities. In fact, we are thinking of doing a program in the coming months involving the Buddhist communities of Bangladesh, bring them here to Yangon or perhaps to Naypyidaw to tell them that this is how we are similar, and at the same time there are some uniqueness in there. So these are the things which will create a much higher level of confidence that these are our brothers, these are our people, and with whom we have had centuries and millennia of relations. So in that context, I think you have very rightly pointed out the importance of people-to-people contact, and there we will be in the short term and the longer term series of visits by opinion builders. Like some friendly competition on football and cricket and some other sports. So in these areas, perhaps we'll be able to make faster progress, and this is what we intend to do, and we have been doing it in the recent times. We have done the first ever painting exhibition jointly with our Myanmarese friends through a workshop last year. We had a food festival organized last year. We're thinking of a cultural troop visit next month. So we'd like to pursue this kind of cultural diplomacy as part of our greater effort to bring the two peoples closer.
Is there anything you would like to add for the readership, for the readers and audience?
What I would like to say is that Bangladesh and Myanmar both are having huge developmental challenges, and I think we should be more focused on the developmental challenges, and as we try to do that, I think we will need support of each other. You cannot develop alone. You have to have the ability to access your neighbors and benefit from their contribution in your own development. One. Number two, in the security domain also, we expect that the new initiatives that we're thinking about will have a long-lasting impact and create the right atmosphere for sectoral collaboration. In the sectoral collaboration, we can have all kind of collaboration under the sun that we can conceive between Bangladesh and Myanmar. So what I would like to say that the period of inaction or indifference towards each other should come to an end very fast, and we should engage in a manner which will be based on mutuality of interest, mutuality of respect for each other, and certainly following those principles of non-interference in each other's matters, and also maintaining territorial integrity of our two countries. So our two countries must have that confidence that we will not get involved in the affairs of the others, but at the same time we would be standing beside each other in the times of need, and together we should pursue a policy of collective self-reliance and see how best we can develop the region and also benefit from the region. So what I would say that we will have to have a fundamentally new approach towards creating right normal, right standard of bilateral relations, because certainly the way we have conducted ourselves in the last few decades is not the best thing to do. So we would expect the incoming administration and Bangladesh government to engage very honestly, discuss issues of divergences as we discuss issues of convergences, take programs which will be beneficial for our people, and through that I think we will be able to bring our two peoples closer, and we will be able to also make things easier for our developmental aspirations to be made.
Yeah. Thank you, Excellency, for your time.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.